What is up, watch fam? I am Christian, the curator of the Theo and Harris Watch Shop, and today I'm going to be talking to you guys about my predictions and hopes for the watch world in 2020. Let's do it. All right, before we jump into our aspirations for the new year, a quick wristwatch check. I am wearing a vintage Rolex Explorer. This one dates to 1958. Beautiful traditional Explorer dial. This is truly one of the first, when I say one of the first, I'm talking about in the first, 2 years of the actual introduction and development of the Explorer line. The watch that went to Mount Everest wasn't an Explorer at all. The Explorer was, Rolex's brilliant successful attempt to capitalize on that achievement. So anyway, long story short, I'm wearing the watch. It's a truly significant piece of history, and it doesn't hurt that it's absolutely gorgeous. Of course, it is available in the Theo and Harris Watch Shop. So if you have any interest in this watch or anything else, please shoot us an email at info@theoandharris.com. Okay, I think because we've already started talking about Rolex, we might as well start off with my aspirations for Rolex. As a vintage Rolex geek, I have come to terms that realistically, the things that I love most about the brand, which are by and large vintage characteristics like gilt dials and 36mm sports watches, aren't realistic and are not going to appear in the modern line. That being said, I do still have some more attainable hopes. One, for a totally redeveloped Milgauss. This is something that I've been talking about for, I'd say, at least 1 to 2 years. The Milgauss now is not a bad watch. We can debate the merits or the beauty of that watch on a separate occasion. But in truth, the watch is, at least in my opinion, too far from its heritage. Whereas you can still see quite the lineage in the Submariner and the Daytona, in the Oyster Perpetual. The other lines, there's a direct correlation. But when it comes to the Milgauss, I think that Rolex strayed a little bit too far, lost a lot of the character. So I'd really like to see them tap into that history of those first, 1 or 2 Milgauss references, 1019 being one, and bring them back into the catalog. Of course, I am fully aware that they will not be introducing, waffle dials and gilt print. I get that, even though that would be sick. But I think that there are moves that Rolex could make, similar to what they did with the Daytona, meaning bringing in those classical elements, but in a modern way, that would make the Milgauss, truthfully, a showstopper. And it wouldn't surprise me that much if they did it. Why? Because Rolex loves letting years pass from when the audience or when the fans first start begging for something. They want to, bait you and then disappoint and then disappoint and then disappoint. And then when they do surprise you, everyone, just goes bananas, leading to, I'm sure we can anticipate, some pretty crazy market demand. The second thing I'd like to see, and again, something I've said before as well, I'd love to see introduction of more inventive day-date dials. So much of what's made the day-date cool historically has been Rolex's usage of whether that's enamel-coated dials or stone dials. And I understand that those dials are extremely expensive, and I have no problem with that. But I just love to see Rolex, let's say in some sort of a salon-type customer service or customer experience, offer these rare and expensive and really interesting dials. Dials that differentiate, whether that be marble or lapis, which they still do, but keep inventing. It could be in jasper, it could be in so many different variations. Anyway, I think that would be incredible. Let's move on to maybe my favorite brand, Cartier. Out of Cartier, there are a couple of things I'd like to see. First, let's focus on the Cintre. Cartier reintroduced the Cintre, I believe, last year or the year before. So it is a new watch. There are very few out there in the wild. But traditionally, from the Cintre's introduction way back in the early 20th century, the watch came in 3 sizes. Right? It came in the large, the medium, and the, traditional or small size. I personally love the small and the medium. I know the large was the smart decision, probably from a just mass market perspective, but I would kill to see Cartier introduce a true Cintre like they have in the small and medium examples. I do see that coming either this year or next. I hope it's this year. It's absolutely a watch that I would put on my list immediately. There is something just so magical about that Cintre case. I go so far as to say basically unlike any other watch. Maybe you can compare it to some vintage American wristwatches, but even then, a lot of those watches, while pack tremendous value under $2,000, don't nearly have that same delicate touch, almost as if it was, crafted by just an artist. They're pieces of art. So I'd love to see smaller versions because right now the Cintre is absolutely enormous And for me, it wears too much like a cuff. Next, Santos Dumont. Cartier recently reintroduced their Santos Dumont. Great watch, definitely one of my favorite Cartiers. And when they reintroduced the watch, I think they did a lot right. The crowns are beautiful, which is a huge, for me, make or break when it comes to Cartier. I love those elongated crowns. Second, the proportions were, in my opinion, dead on for a modern watch. Super thin. They did achieve this by using a quartz movement, which I've said this before with Cartier, I have no problem with. You know, you don't buy a Cartier for the movement, because even when you do, it's generic, whether that's today or so many years ago. Barring a few exceptions, they did use some movements from AP and VC, I believe, or JLC, but even then, that's still not the reason. Even when you're buying a Cartier with an AP movement, that's still not what made the brand what it is. The brand is one of the top designers. And when I say designers, I don't, that's an understatement. I mean, the brand is a top influencer of really what it means to be traditional and classy. It's a recognition of everything they've done within their design lane. Think about it. Patek Philippe with their Nautilus. There are many variations of the Nautilus. You know, 5711, 5712, you have the chronographs, the 5980s, and all these different things. But truthfully, there's no reimagination there of the watch. There is no, the furthest that Patek Philippe ever went with reimagining their Nautilus or speaking within that same language was the Aquanaut, which was a tremendous watch, just as good as the Nautilus. It's basically as far as Patek went, as far as trying to communicate in their same design language. Cartier is a precious metal case, a traditional, typically white Roman dial in ultra slim proportions. And they've reimagined it, whether it be the Santos Dumont or the Cintré or the American or the Tank Louis. So many, I mean, look at all of these different Cartiers. They were able to say, these are our fundamental design principles. How do we reimagine them? And they did so well. And that's why they're so revered. But back to my point. The Santos Dumont they recently introduced is terrific. The one tweak I would like to see, which is super simple, is, I think, a more beautiful dial. The dial's now, it's hard to put a finger on what I'm not a big fan of. Maybe there's a lack of contrast that I don't like, but I really would like to see something more traditional in the dials for these watches. And that is a very superficial criticism, but something I wanted to say. Now, the real idea that I have and the real aspiration that I have for Cartier in 2020, and if it doesn't happen this year, I hope to God it happens very soon. I'd like to see Cartier truly, from scratch, come up with a new, inventive, beautiful design. The Calibre is a cool watch, no doubt. I actually quite like it. I would recommend one. But do I look at it as an achievement of Cartier's design house? No. The Drive was a good watch. I think that, I've gone on the record saying before that Cartier's Drive, particularly the ultra thin, is one of the more, interesting and successful Cartier releases in a long time. That being said, it still doesn't punch me in the stomach the way that the Crash or all the different Cintrés or the Chinois do. Those watches, I feel, were so much more inspired. They came from a place of artistry that the Drive is great. I'm not dissing the Drive, but that the Drive, doesn't have, because that's just more of a, staple model. So I would like to see Cartier reestablish themselves as the geniuses that they are, the traditional innovators, because every couple of years, maybe it's once a decade, you kind of have to remind the world why you are who you are. Otherwise, you kind of rest on your laurels and rely on cheap marketing, not the facts themselves, and everything starts to kind of die. With every generation, it becomes less inspired. So that's what I'd love to see for my favorite brand. Patek Philippe, I'll keep this one simple. I would love to see a Calatrava with the same dial configuration as the 5196P, which is the only one, it's in platinum, it's the only 5196 that has this Breguet style. I would love to see it in either yellow on yellow or rose on rose. Of course, this is a direct homage or rip-off or whatever from the traditional 570 Breguet, but I have no problem with that. I think it's absolutely lovely. I think it's a timeless design. Maybe Patek doesn't want to offer two of these Breguet Calatravas at the same time, so then I would suggest discontinuing the example in platinum, even though I love it. But I get that at every spot in the catalog is very valuable, and you don't want to be too repetitive or redundant. But this watch would just be, I think, not only spectacular, but a global success. The 5070 Breguet is basically everyone's grail, and I think that collectors all over the world would find themselves for the first time in a long time, opting for the extremely traditional Patek Philippe over, the new Aquanaut or Nautilus. Kind of make dress watches great again kind of thing. Audemars Piguet. What happened in 2020? Two big things, in my opinion. One, the Code 1159. The whole collection, I don't think was a big success, in my opinion, from a design point of view. They have some great elements, and some of the pieces within the collection were absolutely wonderful. Some of those dials were just incredible, but the time onlys, again, in my opinion, were lackluster. The cases were terrific, but the dials were very sterile. That being said, it's too soon to alter the 1159. I do not think we will see any changes in 2020 to 1159. I do hope to see them in the future, but not yet. The real winner was the Royal Oak Ultra Thin Perpetual Calendar. This was just a masterpiece. This is quite possibly the most impressive Royal Oak that's come out of this house in I don't know how long. I can't even. The most recent Royal Oak that just blew my mind was maybe the Perpetual in platinum or white gold and salmon, which was a very limited release. But the point remains, I love the 15202. It's an incredible watch. I love so many of the Royal Oaks out there. I love the yellow gold Perpetual that is out there right now. We did a full review on it. I mean, this is an incredible watch, but this ultra slim Perpetual is a cut above. Not only is it incredible, but it's new. AP demonstrated that they actually still knew how to work within the spirit of Genta on their own. The 15202, while yeah, sure, AP still makes it, that's Genta, right? That's over. That was already great. I'd wear one in 2 seconds, but that's not an AP achievement anymore. Or that's Genta. AP can take pride in how they still manage to uphold that spirit and respect this design that they brought to market. And this Ultra Slim is absolutely an example of that. Not to mention the movement, which was able to fit in the case all in, and I believe 6.3 millimeters thick. That is considerably thinner than a 3940. Big props to AP on this. So, what do I hope to see in 2020? While I romanticize traditional AP, I understand the trajectory of the brand. And I believe that their runway to the future is in the usage of alternative materials. They did a killer job in both white and standard black ceramic this past year with Perpetuals. And I'd really like to see them get into the sapphire game more seriously. I'm not a sapphire watch guy. It's not my thing. I understand that's a big Hublot thing, another brand that takes great pride in their usage of alternative materials, but I think that AP can steal the show. AP has cachet that Hublot will never have, in my opinion, and I think that they can cash in on that, and if they can double down on that, I think that they are writing their legacy. Right, the leaders of the company right now are writing their legacy if they can become the house, the home of modern research and development with alternative materials. So that's what I hope to continue seeing from AP. Now, last but not least, Vacheron Constantin. One of their most impressive but under the radar models is their, I'm gonna read this. It's the the QDL.
Quabity Ashwin.
I apologize, I probably should have called up a VC representative for the pronunciation of this model line before making this video. But on that note, I just think that if you're a global brand, while your words can certainly be ethnic, they should be able to be easily pronounceable and readable, right? I mean, overseas, well, that's not an ethnic word, but you know what I mean? I don't know. That's a difficult word, okay, in my defense. Point is, I think that this piece is extremely impressive. I'm really interested in the dial design. I think it's very unique. The way they integrated the date is beautiful. I really like the case. It's uncommon to find a brand, any brand, nonetheless a brand in the Holy Trinity, actually like inventing a new case. Actually saying we're gonna go on a limb here. It's gonna be unusual. It's gonna be now. We're not just pulling from somewhere else. And I think that that's very impressive. The problem with this watch is it's too large. Its case is 41 millimeters, which is not inherently bad, but the case is so wide. The lug to lug is, I believe, over 50. It's just too substantial for not all wrists, but basically every wrist I've ever seen one on. Every time I see one in a photo, let's say a blogger is doing a review, and they don't have small wrists. I know I have small wrists, but they don't. Not always, at least. And the watch is just towering. It totally swallows your arm. And because it's not super, super thin like the Bulgari Octo Finissimo, it really wears that much larger. So I'd love to see this watch reintroduced, let's say at 38 millimeters. 39 would be a compromise, but 38 would be perfect. It wouldn't wear like a traditional 38 because it is so wide, because it is on the thicker side. But I think at the price point it's at, which is around $15,000, this could be a huge, huge disruptor in the space. 15K is a really interesting price because it's just over Rolex, but it's not in the territory of, you know, traditionally Holy Trinity watchmaking, which is 20K and up. And usually between 10 and 20, if you do buy Holy Trinity, you know, oftentimes it's one of those, you know, budget examples, which is a little bit uninventive, or the ones that nobody wants. But this piece is not that. It is inventive, it is interesting, it packs way more punch than it costs. It's just too big. So VC, please shrink this guy a little bit. I think you've got a home run in your hands. That's it. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope 2020 is just as incredible as you hope it is. If you like watches, go ahead and subscribe to our channel at Theo and Harris. And if you are interested in anything vintage or pre-owned, head on over to the watch shop at theoandharris.com. I'll be there to help. This is the Hoyer Bund 1550SG, a mid-60s oversized flyback chronograph with hacking function for accuracy, standard issue for the West German Luftwaffe, and now one of the most sought-after military watches on the market.